Good afternoon, class. My name is Anthony Zumo, and today I'll be talking to you a little bit about German emergency management and how they've become the leader in European disaster prevention. Germany, located in the heart of Europe and the leading benefactor of the European Union, gets a lot of traveling, making border security a constant threat. Alongside that, the number of low-lying plains and forests, combined with the abundance of rivers that run through Germany, make flooding the #1 natural disaster occurrence in the country. Due to those factors, the emergency management in Germany is really centralized, maintaining the critical infrastructure to mitigate and respond to disasters, either before or in a disaster. There were a string of natural disasters from 1997 up until about 2004 that really signified the lack of communication amongst the European states, and even the lack of communication with the federal government and the Germanic states. Combined with the top-down approach that Germany takes on all of their natural and man-made disasters, in the essence that there are numerous Germanic states, and that the proximity of the federal government, combined with the financial ability of the federal government, really allows for top-down procedures to occur. In response to 9/11, the German federal government realized that the communication with its states was necessary, and that they couldn't risk a man-made disaster as America did on 9/11. So in response, the Joint Information Center, the JIC, was created really to synchronize all the efforts with the state and the federal government. The modern organizations were created with this one, underneath this one, to really study climate and geographic changes and how they would really affect the German population and the German critical infrastructure. One of these natural disasters worth mentioning, perfect example, was the Elbe River flood in 2002. Despite the fact that Germany had spent millions and millions of euros rebuilding their flood infrastructure, the lack of communication and organization with the federal government and the states resulted in 200,000 people being displaced post-disaster. This really signifies the lack of preparedness that the states have with natural disasters. There were 12 billion euros worth of damage in this river flood, and the river flood really generated from a 100-year storm that created a 150-year flood that lasted several months in some areas of Germany. In 2004, in response to the number of natural disasters that were really going unchecked and unmitigated, there were 6 ministry positions that the federal government and the president really put forth in the German emergency management plan. These 6 minister positions ranged from anywhere the Minister of the Interior to Minister of Education and Research. These ministers were really created to encompass all of the aspects of emergency management and to cover all the constant threats that Germany faces on a daily basis. It was really a strong response also to, like I said earlier, with the amount of natural disasters that had went, I said unchecked and unmitigated, but really unspecialized. These disasters, a lot of these disasters were as detrimental as they were due to the lack of specialization in Germany that we actually see here in America with the Department of Homeland Security. So pretty much Germany did what America did with the Department of Homeland Security, was that they just created a lot of cabinet positions, a lot of organizational structures that would support the main efforts. In 2004, alongside with these minister positions, was the Joint Counterterrorism Center was created in the heart of Germany. This was also a response to the rising Islamic threat, as their quotes, not mine, in the essence that they felt that the modern jihad movement was going to be their biggest threat to emergency management. This really prevented the creation of this organization in 2004. Literally prevented numerous terrorist acts. The German federal government acknowledges how lucky it was that these attacks on the nation happened after this joint counterterrorism center was created. One of those attacks I'd like to get into real quick was the terrorist attack in 2008, or the attempted terrorist attack, where there was a bomb that was sent from Yemen that passed through the Bonn airport in Germany that was destined for Chicago. And it was because of this joint counterterrorism center that they really collected enough information from interwebs and jihad movements and stuff like that, that this counterterrorism center prevented the bomb from ever entering Bonn airport, and ever entering the United States, possibly protecting Chicago from a huge explosion. This is one example of the Germanic influence on international counterterrorism and how they really have taken a spearheaded movement against terrorism. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about how Germany's spearheaded movements really affected the European Union. The Lisbon Treaty in 2007, which included all 27 states of the European Union, created border procedures, nuclear procedures, river and sea monitoring, and chemical research. All these aspects of detrimental emergency management were really ignored by neighboring nations of Germany. And like I said before, Germany is in a symbiont circle with the nations around it, and what happens to them will ultimately affect Germany itself. So, in 2007, Germany had called for the EU conference, where all 27 states signed the Lisbon Treaty, which created standards procedures for how each country was going to protect themselves and monitor themselves, instead of Germany kind of relying on them to do it themselves. So, the Lisbon Treaty was signed in 2007. Finally, there were tons of integrated systems amongst the states after the signing of the Lisbon Treaty, from rivers to nuclear plants to disease prevention. All the nations of the European Union were now active fighters in this emergency management war. In the essence that what was happening up until 2007 was pretty much going entirely unmitigated and unchecked amongst the states as well. Lastly, the volunteer efforts that Germany has put forth not only in its own country but in the European Union have gone unsurpassed internationally, with a 1.2 million standing volunteer service. Germany has the largest standing volunteer program in the world, excuse me. And that also goes on to say that with their 2 million members in emergency defense and emergency management, and the recent advances in laws, medicine within the European Union and amongst other nations, Germany has truthfully spearheaded the emergency management movement within the last 15 years for all European states, through example. Yeah. So, in closing, I really would say that it's impossible for me to mention every single aspect of German emergency management and go through all the history of that. But however, I will say that in the last 15 years, Germany is mainly responsible for the successful natural and man-made disaster prevention, not only in the European Union, but all around the world. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm Anthony Zumo. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.